You're listening to Blossoming Technologist, a podcast for young professionals in tech discovering skills, careers, and tips for being in the tech industry. I'm your host, Marisa, and today we're going to do a solo episode. And I want to talk about something that I think is super important, and that is why breaks are really important. The reason for this is that I might as well announce it right now, but I'm going to take a short break from the podcast, about a month or so. Although I'm not going to hold myself to a strict month, but really need to take a break because things have been crazy recently, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I think it's like a really good time, and season 3 has been going so well, and I've been really enjoying it that I want to make sure I'm giving it the energy and attention that it requires to really make it great and make sure I'm producing great content, finding amazing guests to share with y'all. So the reason why things are crazy right now is because, number one, I started a new job. Maybe I'll talk about it more in the rest of the season, but I'm the new technical assistant to the CTO of the company I work at called ThoughtWorks. And so that's been, an adjustment to onboard, understand everything going on, learn the job. I have different hours now, so I'm waking up a little bit earlier. So it's been, a lot to take on and adjust to, along with the podcast. The other thing is that we got a new puppy. So that has been a bit of a challenge. I guess it's been an enjoyable challenge. I have never had a dog before, so learning how to, have a dog, and then of course on top of that, she's a puppy. So doing that, and that attributes to the early hours too, a little sleep deprived here and there. So I've been really focusing on those two things right now. And in addition to that, I'm starting a new leadership position soon in a community service organization that I'm a part of. I'm really excited about that and trying to give that the due diligence that it requires. And then I also have a business trip coming up. I've had a bunch of guests cancel recently, and so I haven't been able to get ahead on episodes like I wanted to. And so I'm hoping to use this time where I'm going to take a break from publishing new episodes weekly, but I am still going to be finding people to interview, doing those interviews, getting the episodes completely ready to be published so that I have a backlog of, 4 or 5 episodes before I go live with the next segment of season 3. And in the meantime, while I'm on this short break, I'm going to curate some of my favorite episodes that I've done in those seasons. So if you haven't listened to them, you totally should. It will be the same content, but I'm going to record a little minute or two at the beginning, just talking about why I enjoyed that episode or what I learned from it, or thinking back to it now after a year or however long after that episode, any insights I have from it. And so I wanted to still bring some sort of lesson today for this short episode about breaks, and a couple of things to share here. The first is sharing a story where I guess I've always known I'm someone who kind of gets overwhelmed pretty easily. I put a lot on my plate all the time. And thinking back to high school, I remember taking a bunch of, AP classes and other tough classes, doing dozens of extracurriculars, and I would get super stressed out. There were several times that I would, just get so overwhelmed to the point where I wouldn't want to do anything. And that still happens to me every now and then. But I remember with many of those times, my mom would sit me down and say, okay, what needs to happen right now? What is one thing you can do right now? Just focus on one thing and then do the next thing and then do the next thing. And before you know it, you will finish all the things. But when I catch myself, thinking of all the things I could be doing, it ends up a disaster. So I kind of learned that back in high school that if I'm overwhelmed, I really need to just take it one step at a time, which I think is why now I keep to-do lists almost religiously. Huge shout out to the app Todoist. I will link that in the show notes. It is amazing. One of my old tech leads introduced me to it. And, oh, sorry, this is such a tangent, but you can set categories for your to-do items and also when each one is due. And that's a good and a bad thing, because then I get stressed out because I miss the like due dates that I make up. But you figure it out. It's a really good app. It's free. I love it. Anyway, back to my story. That's how I learned to, keep track of things I need to do. And honestly, on the weekends, I'm usually the most productive in terms of getting things done, because I'll make a list of like, this weekend, these are the things that absolutely need to get done. And that's like, grocery shopping, doing the laundry, recording this podcast episode, maybe making dinner, whatever it is. I feel like that's really manageable for me because it's like 2 days and there's nothing else going on besides those things I need to get done. And that really helps me deal with being overwhelmed and deal with, getting through whatever I need to get done or whatever I have committed myself to. So even as an adult, because I know I was talking about high school, but even as an adult, you have a lot of things going on. You have work, hobbies, friends to hang out with, maybe family, whatever is going on in your life can be a lot. And I know I've felt that way tons of times. Sometimes I have moments where I'm like, I'm doing absolutely nothing. But other times I have way too much on my plate. And I have used those moments to really think about which of the things on my plate can I kind of put to the side for now and take a break from, because that's going to allow me to have the brain space to really dedicate to these other things. And I wanted to talk about this because I think it's so important to remember that, life gets stressful and it's okay to take a break. It's okay to say, I love making this podcast and I love talking about it and telling people about it and interviewing people, but I just cannot right now. So whatever that activity is for you, if you're feeling stressed out of like, I have 5 things going on, like if I went down to 4, life would be better. Do it. Take a break from that thing and maybe take a break from all the things temporarily and give yourself the space to just think through things and decompress and maybe like meditate, whatever works for you. I think it's really important. And, there's science behind taking breaks too. Taking breaks often prevents or even reduces stress. It can make your mood better. It can improve your physical health because, if you're stressed out, maybe you're losing hair, maybe you are, not eating as well because you're constantly thinking about the other things you need to do. So that can be detrimental. But then also taking a break can fuel your creativity. And that's the big thing that I've been thinking about, where with the podcast, like I really need to be, creative. I also need to be motivated, which taking a break helps with that. So those 2 things are really important for my specific thing. But when you're thinking about, maybe you need to take a break during the workday, that will help you think better. There's this book I really enjoy called Your Brain at Work by David Rock, and it breaks down kind of like how your brain works, especially during your workday at your job, and also associated with breaks and sleeping and stuff like that. And there's one section where they talk about how sleep is so important to your day to day. And I want to talk about this because sleep is kind of like, the ultimate break you can take. It's your break between days, between information that you're learning from Monday to Tuesday, etc. And I think it's really fascinating because when you sleep, your brain is actually clearing out any toxins and gunk in your brain more rapidly than when you're awake, because it's always doing that. But when you sleep, it does it at a faster pace because the space between your brain cells actually increases during sleep, which is crazy. But it clears out a lot of those toxins like proteins and whatever to give you a fresh start on the next day. So something like, if you're overwhelmed, sleeping can be super helpful. Taking a walk is also a super helpful way to take a break, because when you learn something new, let's say you're working at your job and you learn something new, you then build a new connection between the neurons in your brain, which honestly is fascinating. I find all brain stuff really fascinating. But when you exercise or go for a walk, this actually stimulates new neurons forming. So you're actually improving the ability to make connections between the ideas that you have in your brain. And so if you're ever, let's say you're a software developer like me and you're coding and you can't figure something out, that's why often stepping away from the computer, going for a walk can really help, because it helps your brain, in the background in your subconscious, make those connections between things and things that you have just started learning, and see what is that solution. So sleeping and taking a walk are both really great ways to give yourself a break from whatever craziness is happening. So we're going to keep this as a really short episode. I am excited to continue interviewing people. If you have anyone who you think would be great to interview, they're in the tech industry, they, are a business owner or a software developer, quality analyst, whatever role they have, please reach out to me. You can also check out my website for guests that we've had in the past and how to contact me. I would love any recommendations for people to have on the podcast, and we'll be back soon with more new episodes in the coming months. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the replays of some episodes from seasons 1 and 2. Thank you, as always, so much for listening, and we'll see you next time, where we'll continue blossoming together.